Family, Assalamu alaikum, brother Rizza Islam here. Thank you for tuning in to watch this video presentation of 9/11, where you will be receiving a large number of facts in less than 12 minutes, less than 10 minutes from my understanding. I just want us to understand, recently, the victims, some of those who are the family of the victims of 9/11, have recently been seen by Congress. Recently. This is 18 years later, and Congress has recently seen them. And not all of those who were supposed to be there, meaning the congressmen or congresswomen, were present. They don't care, clearly, about the lives that were lost. And that was everyone. Anyone's life who was lost, Muslim, Christian, black, white, etc. This government has done these things a number of times, but 9/11 is by far one of the greatest, if not the largest, lie committed in the name of profit, in the name of blanketing an entire religion. Because to this very day, Muslims are still affected by this terrorist label that was foisted upon the people, because it is a lie. So, America, let us be very careful. And everyone who's watching, just jot down all the facts. Let us know how many facts you can remember. And I pray this helps you. And also remember that the day before 9/11, money went missing. Over 2 trillion. Let's just always follow the money. So, hope this answers a lot of questions. Make sure you watch it. And then we have an assignment at the very end. Now, I did this video 2 years ago, so the quality is not as good, nowhere near as good as the quality of my videos are now. So don't worry about the quality, just get the facts. Now, because of this lie, millions of Muslims, millions of innocent men, women, and children have been bombed, murdered all across Muslim nations, the Middle East, African countries, etc., on the basis of a lie. To this very day, due to the depleted uranium that was dropped on them, the children are suffering. The actual agriculture, the food, the crops, the soil is poisoned so heavily to where it may never return to normal, ever. So I want us to understand that as a result of this lie dealing with 9/11 and what they created, it has caused millions to suffer. So again, regardless of whether you are Muslim, Christian, white, black, etc., Muslims have become the target. Muslims have suffered the most, and now the world is becoming aware of it. Always say, never forget 9/11. I will say this to our people. Never forget slavery. Never forget the horror that our ancestors went through and that we still go through to this very day in a different form. Never forget. Never forget all of our over 60 towns that we had. Never forget the bombing of Wall Street, Black Wall Street. Never forget what we have had to endure. So everyone is talking about 9/11, but we have had a 9/11 for over 400 years. Assalamu alaikum, family, brother Rizza Islam. Oh boy, 9/11, let's do it. Historically, we know that America lies over and over again and has a way of scapegoating other people to cover up for the things that they... Case in point, in the early 1990s, they had something called the Illuminati card game, which foretold about many different things that were going to happen. Things like genetically modified food, the bombing of the Pentagon, and the bombing of the World Trade Center. Interestingly enough, in 1996, there was a movie called A Long Kiss Goodnight, starring Samuel L. Jackson, where the man at the very end said, we're going to go ahead and fake kill 4,000 people by bombing the World Trade Center. He referenced in that movie the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, where 6 people died on February 26, 1993, and said, we're going to blame it on the Muslim, talking about a future bombing. September the 11th, 2001, World Trade Center bombing, where over 2,000 people died by supposedly 19 Muslims who hijacked 2 planes with box cutters when America has an over $40 billion security system with all the weapons on the planet. Larry Silverstein, who purchased the building for over $3 billion and placed acts of terrorism in the insurance policy, he made all that money back and then some. Oh, that's too much of this for part 1. Go to part 2. 9/11 Part 2. The World Trade Center buildings were full of asbestos, meaning they would cost billions of dollars to fix and clean up and renovate. Legally, they were called uninhabitable. So why did they allow people to inhabit them? At least 2 days prior to the bombings, the security guards were ordered to remove all bomb-sniffing dogs from the building. People who were on the ground that day saw that the buildings were roped off with caution tape hours before the bombing. Oh yeah, by the way, remember when I talked about Larry Silverstein, who purchased the building and he put inside of his insurance clause acts of terrorism? Oh yeah, the insurance company paid him $4.8 billion. Whew, how is it that there was an Israeli film crew dressed as Arabs across the river hours before the first plane ever hit? How did they know to be there? Many so-called Jews who are actually Ashkenazis were sent a text message that day and told not to come to work. Who sent that message? Ehud Barak, founder of the Israeli Military Covert Operations Force, was over in London on BBC Radio right within minutes of the bombing, telling them on radio, national radio, that we should call for a war against terror and that there was a bombing on the World Trade Center in New York City. Isn't there a major time difference between London and New York? He blames Osama bin Laden. Go to part 3. 9/11, part 3. It's very interesting how he blamed Osama bin Laden for 9/11. Do me a favor, pause this video and go and Google FBI files Osama bin Laden and see what he's charged with. I'll wait. Did you do it? From page 1 all the way down to page 11, they tell you everything that he's charged with, and over again, it has nothing to do with the bombing of the World Trade Center. Oh, America, your putrid lies. Muslims did that? Oh, and yeah, you know how they say that he's the leader of Al-Qaeda? Really, the leader of Al-Qaeda? Isn't that the very group that Hillary Clinton admitted that the CIA created because Al-Qaeda is the CIA? And Osama bin Laden was a member of the CIA under the code name Tim Osman? Yeah, America worked with Osama bin Laden. You know, when they needed to push the Soviets out of Afghanistan, they contracted with him and they worked with him as a CIA agent. But back to the World Trade Center. Over 2,000 engineers are calling for the United States government to reopen the files dealing with 9/11 because they're having a lot of questions about this situation. Many Israelis were arrested after the bombing of the World Trade Center and then they were sent back to Israel. And you see how much Donald Trump is defending Israel recently? Go to part 4. 9/11 part 4. Donald J. Trump was trying to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel when it is the capital of Palestine. Just last year, America gave Israel over $38 billion. Right after the bombing of the World Trade Center, Benjamin Netanyahu, who some call Bibi, who is the prime minister of Israel, said, quote, "We are benefiting from one thing, and that is the bombing of the World Trade Center and the struggle of America in Iraq." Ooh, man. You see, here's the problem. We believe everything that the news media tells us. And the moment they said Muslims did it, everybody jumped all over. But back to 9/11. Over 200 people who were there that day said that they heard explosions all throughout the building. And all of those tapes and interviews of the people who said this were confiscated by the CIA and the FBI from all of the major news networks, including CNN, Fox, all. Even Bill O'Reilly interviewed a young man on his show, and this young man told him that his father told him that the Muslims had nothing to do with the bombing of 9/11, and that man's father was a vet. Oh, Bill O'Reilly got pissed off and yelled at him and cut off his mic. It is simple physics that when you hit something, it is supposed to explode, not implode. Both of the World Trade Center buildings imploded straight down in demolition format, and Building 7 right down the street fell all the way down in the demolition. Part 5. 9/11 part 5. If you don't believe the truth by now, I don't know what to tell you. Or maybe I do. Yeah, remember when I talked about building number 7 that was right down the street that got hit? Oh yeah, I'm sorry, it didn't get hit and it went down the same way the Twin Towers, literally in a demolition format. Hell, as much as George Bush lies after 9/11, he said that Islam had nothing to do with terror. Specifically, he said terrorism is not the face of Islam, and that Islam is peace. Oh, he sounded so nice. Unusually high put options were put on the stock market dealing with United Airlines right before 9/11. Put options means that the person who is betting on this stock would receive a benefit or a profit if that stock goes down. According to Bloomberg News, this would have, quote, been the greatest coincidence of mankind if, in fact, it were a coincidence. Many people got rich after the bombing of the World Trade Center. Very funny how right before the bombing occurred, they had no pictures of anyone who did it. They had no idea, no nothing. Within just a few hours, the FBI released 19 photos of 19 different men. How does this happen? Right after this occurred, at least 5 of those men turned up in Saudi Arabia, living free and well. But if these men were from Saudi Arabia, why did we get sent to Afghanistan and Iraq? Oh Allah, part 6. 9/11, part 6. America's very chummy with Saudi Arabia. Even though Saudi Arabia commits all these human rights violations, but America's fine with them because they give America cheap oil. Right after 9/11, President George Bush called President Mullah Omar, who was the president of Afghanistan, telling him that you need to give up Osama bin Laden and bring him over here so that he can be put before trial. And Mullah Omar responded, he said, okay, that's fine. Just send me proof that he was the one who was guilty for 9/11. President George Bush responded with, we're not negotiating with you, give him up or else. Which means he didn't have the proof. And just how was it that these 19 hijackers knew that on the morning of 9/11 that there were going to be multiple different flight drills being conducted by the Army, the U.S. Navy, all these different forms of military, leaving only 2 fighter jets to protect the entire northeastern coast? How did they know that? Why was Attorney General Ashcroft warned to not use commercial airlines prior to 9/11? Why is it that jet fuel does not burn at the temperature required in order to melt steel? You're trying to convince us that some man over there in a cave with a computer contrived all this. You too, Farrakhan 9/11. Right. Now, did you learn something? Yes, no, maybe? Did you know everything in there, or did you just know some of the things, or did you know most of the things? Either way, here's the assignment. Number 1, there's a book by Christopher Bolin called Solving 9/11. Make sure you get that book. Number 2, there's a book by Elia Muhammad called The War Against Islam, or Exposing the War Against Islam. Get that book. Number 3, there's a book titled Unmasking the 9/11 Conspiracies by Jim Marrs. Unmasking the 9/11 Conspiracies by Jim Marrs. Get that book. Make sure you order my book as well, called Message to the Millennials. Click the link right here below, or go to my website, RizzaIslam.com, and order your copy there. I touch on 9/11 briefly in there as well. Thank you so much, family. Also, for those who just simply want to watch videos right away, YouTube Farrakhan 9/11. Farrakhan 9/11. He has maybe 15 different videos on that, but make sure you look at the longer one, which talks about 9/11, what really happened, where it goes through the entire oil research all the way through the Middle East, and the connection to the Bush family and connection with the White House, etc. Also, YouTube Ken O'Keefe 9/11. Ken O'Keefe 9/11. And for those of you, my brothers and sisters, who are heavily into government conspiracy and who do your research heavily, there is an old documentary which came out years ago called Loose Change. Loose Change, which broke down virtually everything right after it happened. So all of these different references, study them. Make sure you share this video onto your page and get the conversation going, because again, over 2,000 engineers are calling for them to reopen the files dealing with 9/11 because they have found too many inconsistencies, too many things that don't make sense. So let's get this conversation going so that the people can get real justice, and that Muslims will have this terrorism label removed from us, and that everyone can finally see the truth, which is that this government has done some very wicked and horrific things.
All you scared to death Negroes, just sit down.